Division of Consumer Affairs in New Jersey, where an announcement was made a few minutes ago banning 19 different motor oils that were being sold in New Jersey for viscosity levels that don't match their bottles.
Every major oil company in America raised their prices the same month this year. April 2026, Mobil 1, Castrol, Shell, Pennzoil, all of them, pause. Roughly $1 more per quart all at once. B-roll, gas station shelf of oil bottles, price stickers. But here's the part they don't want you thinking about. The word full synthetic on that bottle, it's not regulated. A company can legally put that label on highly refined crude oil, and one of the biggest names in the industry already tried to stop a competitor from doing exactly that, and lost. Today, I'm naming the 6 full synthetic brands with the weakest case for their price tag, and the 3 that actually back up what's printed on the label. One of them isn't even sold at a regular store. The test setup. Here's why you can trust what's coming. The data in this video pulled from 3 real sources. First, used oil analysis reports, the kind submitted by real vehicle owners to labs and posted publicly on Bob is the Oil Guy, the largest motor oil forum in the country. Second, an actual ranked 8 oil test conducted by Lake Speed Jr., known online as the Motor Oil Geek. B-roll, oil testing lab equipment. He's a society of tribologists and lubrication engineers, certified lubrication specialist, and he spent 12 years as the lubricant specialist for Joe Gibbs Racing in NASCAR. Third, actual federal court filings, including an active class action against one of the brands on this list, not opinions. Documents. Pause. What you're about to hear is going to change which bottle you grab next time you're standing in that aisle. The Group 3 secret. But here's what makes this whole category suspicious in the first place. In the late 1990s, Mobil filed a formal complaint against Castrol, accusing it of false advertising for calling its Syntec oil full synthetic when it was actually made from Group 3 base oil, a heavily refined crude product, not a true synthetic Group 4 compound. Pause. Mobil lost. The National Advertising Division ruled that synthetic is a marketing term about performance, not a legal claim about what's inside the bottle. And here's the part that should make you angry. Shortly after that ruling, Mobil quietly switched much of its own full synthetic lineup to the very same Group 3 base oil it had just spent money arguing wasn't synthetic. The lawsuit that was supposed to protect the word ended up gutting it. That's the loophole every brand on this list is operating inside of right now. Castrol GTX Full Synthetic. Castrol GTX and Full Synthetic is the brand at the center of the entire scandal you just heard about, and it's still sitting on store shelves today. Still labeled full synthetic, still built on the same Group 3 base it was using when Mobil tried to stop it. B-roll, Castrol GTX bottle on shelf. Lake Speed Jr.'s lab-grade comparison test ranked Castrol's competing high-performance synthetic line, Edge, near the bottom of an 8-oil field measured for friction reduction and oxidation resistance, well behind purpose-built synthetics designed from Group 4 and 5 base stocks. But here's what makes this worse than a simple quality gap. Castrol's own marketing leans hard on its European racing heritage to justify the price, Formula 1, endurance racing, while the GTX full synthetic on the shelf at your local AutoZone shares almost nothing with that race oil except the logo on the bottle. Owners on Bob is the Oil Guys forum have spent years comparing notes on Castrol's product range, with one longtime poster bluntly calling certain Castrol conventional lines a complete waste of money, while praising the company's higher-tier Syntec formula in the same breath. A split reputation that should tell you something. The brand name alone doesn't guarantee what's in the bottle. At roughly $28 for a 5-quart jug and a standard 5,000-mile change interval, Castrol GTX Full Synthetic runs about $0.0056 per mile. Competitive on price, but built on the exact base oil technology its own industry rival once tried to disqualify from the word synthetic. But Castrol only set up the scandal. Number 5 actually got sued over it. Valvoline Advanced Full Synthetic. Valvoline is America's oldest motor oil brand, founded all the way back in 1866, and right now, in 2026, it's the defendant in an active federal class action over exactly what's going into customers' engines. Plaintiff Robert Campbell filed suit against Valvoline in Indiana federal court, alleging that when he brought his 2025 Kia Sorento into a Valvoline location in Westfield, Indiana in October 2025, the shop installed Valvoline's own 5W30 oil, despite Kia's manufacturer specification calling for 0W30. The lawsuit claims this caused decreased performance, engine damage, and put his factory warranty coverage at risk. But here's what makes this dangerous beyond one lawsuit. Wrong viscosity oil isn't a cosmetic mistake. Thicker than spec oil flows slower at cold startup, the exact moment most engine wear happens. If a national chain installed the wrong weight at scale, that's not a one-off error, that's a process failure repeating at every location running the same procedure. Forum complaints attached to coverage of this case echo the same pattern. One commenter described lifter damage after years of service at a Valvoline branded location, writing that the oil installed wasn't full synthetic, despite being billed as such, and that customer service nor MBFR cared when they raised it. Another described recurring stalling and backfiring traced to oil service at the same chain. At around $27 for a 5-quart jug of advanced full synthetic and a 5,000-mile interval, Valvoline costs roughly $0.0054 per mile for the oil itself. Cheap until you factor in a lawsuit alleging the wrong oil went into the car in the first place. Number 4 trades a viscosity problem for something that sounds almost reasonable, until you read the fine print. Pennzoil Ultra Platinum. Pennzoil's whole pitch is that its synthetic base oil comes from natural gas instead of crude, and the company has leaned on that story for over a decade to justify Ultra Platinum's spot near the top of the price list. Lakespeed Jr.'s testing methodology, which measures real oxidation resistance and deposit control rather than marketing claims, has repeatedly pointed out a gap between gas-to-liquid synthetic base oils and the purpose-engineered PAO and ester-based stocks used in race-grade products. The natural gas origin story affects how the oil is made, not necessarily how it performs under sustained heat. But here's what makes Pennzoil's pitch suspicious on its own terms. If a cleaner base oil were the deciding factor in engine protection, Pennzoil's marketing claims about reducing sludge wouldn't need backing from comparisons against decades-old conventional oil, the bar that's easiest to clear. Real-world feedback on long-running threads at Bob is the Oil Guy includes owners reporting a measurable drop in mileage and an increase in engine noise within 3,000 miles of switching to Pennzoil Platinum, with one owner explicitly noting elevated iron readings on a used oil analysis at under 6,000 miles on the oil. At roughly $26 for 5 quarts and a 5,000-mile interval, Pennzoil Ultra Platinum runs about $0.0052 per mile, among the cheapest premium synthetics on this list, which raises the obvious question of what corner is being cut to hit that price. But here's what makes the next one worse. It's not the cheapest brand causing problems. It's one of the most trusted, Mobil 1 Advanced Full Synthetic. Mobil 1 built its entire reputation as the benchmark full synthetic, the oil every other brand gets measured against. And that's exactly why what happened to its own formulation matters so much. After the National Advertising Division ruling protected the right to call Group 3 base oil synthetic, Mobil, the same company that fought that ruling, shifted much of its mainstream advanced full synthetic lineup onto Group 3 base stock. Forum members on Club Lexus and several oil-specific forums have tracked this shift for over a decade, noting that Mobil's own technical support lines have confirmed a dyno-derived base with a synthetic additive package in some product lines sold in the US market specifically. In Lakespeed Jr.'s ranked 8 oil comparison, a Mobil 1 product line, truck and SUV formula, landed in the bottom half of the field, behind purpose-built synthetics using true Group 4 and 5 base stocks. But here's what makes this particularly galling. Mobil 1 still markets itself using the exact advanced full synthetic language that started this entire industry controversy in the first place, selling the benchmark reputation it built decades ago on a formulation that, by its own past legal argument, wouldn't have qualified as synthetic at all. At roughly $24 for 5 quarts of advanced full synthetic, Mobil 1 runs about $0.0048 per mile on a 5,000-mile interval, the cheapest entry on this list and arguably the one trading hardest on a reputation its current formula doesn't fully back up. 2 more to go, and the next one might be sitting in your garage right now. Supertech Full Synthetic. Supertech is Walmart's house brand, manufactured for the retailer rather than by an independent oil company with its own research division. And it's become one of the most discussed budget synthetics on every major oil forum precisely because nobody agrees on what's actually inside it. The product is manufactured by a contract refiner rather than disclosed directly to consumers, and forum threads dedicated to comparing budget store brands consistently note that base oil sourcing for private label products can shift between production runs without any change to the label, meaning the bottle you buy in January isn't guaranteed to be the same formulation as the one you buy in July. But here's what makes this worse than simple inconsistency. You have no way to verify long-term protection on a product whose formulation isn't fixed. Every independent oil analysis only tells you about the exact batch that was tested, not the one currently on the shelf. Compare that to Costco's house brand, Kirkland Signature, which sources its oil from a named, disclosed manufacturer, Warren Oil, and has built a reputation among independent testers for holding up reasonably well even past 10,000 miles. Supertech offers no equivalent transparency about who's actually blending the product or where the base stock originates batch to batch. Owners running extended oil change intervals, the same intervals full synthetic oil is supposed to make safe, are taking on that uncertainty without realizing it, because the marketing promise of full synthetic implies a consistency the manufacturing process behind a contract-refined private label simply doesn't guarantee in writing. At around $20 for 5 quarts, Supertech is the cheapest oil on this entire list at roughly $0.0040 per mile. But that price reflects a contract-manufactured product with formulation variability the bottle never discloses, and no public testing trail to confirm what you're actually buying changed from one jug to the next. Now, before we get to the worst one, hit that subscribe button because the brand at number 1 isn't a budget oil at all. It's one most of you trust completely. Royal Purple Full Synthetic. Royal Purple markets itself almost entirely on motorsports credibility. Purple bottles, dyno charts, claims of measurable horsepower gains. It commands a price closer to boutique racing oils than to a mainstream synthetic. But in Lakespeed Jr.'s weighted, lab-tested 8-oil ranking, a test that specifically measured the kind of performance metrics Royal Purple's marketing leans on, Royal Purple Full Synthetic finished dead last, 8th out of 8, behind every other oil in the field, including several priced lower. Forum testimony on Bob as the Oil Guy describes a specific failure pattern. One longtime poster recounted switching to Royal Purple at a charity discounted oil change and immediately noticing significant valvetrain noise that disappeared the moment they switched back to a different brand, and noted they weren't alone, citing a friend's Corvette with the identical symptom on the identical oil. But here's what makes this the most expensive mistake on the entire list. You're not just paying a premium price for an underperforming product, you're paying a premium price because of marketing claims that an actual lab-administered, weighted test directly contradicts. That's not an oil that costs more for a reason. That's the reason itself being the problem. At roughly $38 for 5 quarts, Royal Purple runs about $0.0076 per mile, nearly double Supertech's cost, for a product that finished last in independent testing built around the exact performance claims Royal Purple uses to justify that price. That's the worst of it. Now let's talk about what actually worked, because the gap between these and the winners is bigger than you think. Pennzoil Platinum, standard formula. Pennzoil's mainstream platinum line, not the ultra platinum line called out earlier, but its standard synthetic, earns its spot for a simple reason. It's one of the most widely cross-shopped oils on Bob is the Oil Guy's forums, and the natural gas to liquid base process, while not flawless under extreme stress, is independently documented and consistently disclosed, unlike Supertech's variable sourcing. The company has staked its entire brand identity on that gas to liquid process for over a decade, and unlike a private label oil with no public manufacturing trail, Pennzoil's base oil sourcing has been scrutinized repeatedly by independent reviewers and oil chemists precisely because the company keeps making public claims about it. That scrutiny is a feature, not a bug. A brand that invites independent testing earns more trust than one that quietly changes formulation between production runs. It's also one of the most affordable name brand synthetic carrying full API SP certification, with 5-quart pricing typically landing under $24 even after this year's industry-wide increase, and it remains available at nearly every retailer in the country, rather than through a limited dealer network. At roughly $0.0048 per mile on a standard 5,000-mile interval, Pennzoil Platinum delivers documented, traceable base oil sourcing at a price competitive with brands offering far less transparency about what's actually in the bottle, proof that the standard formula in a brand's lineup can be a completely different product from the ultra version sitting right next to it on the same shelf. But the next winner didn't just survive a controversy, it's the brand that started it and won. Castrol Edge. Yes, the same parent company as the GTX line called out at number 6, but Castrol Edge is a meaningfully different product, and it's the formula Lakespeed Jr.'s testing methodology and multiple independent comparison sites consistently treat as Castrol's legitimate top-tier offering. Built with Castrol's fluid titanium technology additive package layered onto a more rigorously controlled base stock than the GTX line. Independent comparison testing has repeatedly placed Castrol Edge competitively against Mobil 1's flagship lines in head-to-head shear stress and turbo bearing load scenarios, exactly the conditions where cheaper synthetics tend to fail first. The lesson here matters. Same company, 2 completely different outcomes depending on which specific product you actually grab off the shelf. The brand name on the bottle tells you less than the specific product line does. At roughly $30 for 5 quarts in a 5,000-mile interval, Castrol Edge runs about $0.0060 per mile, a premium over its own sister product, but one backed by independent shear stress data rather than just a racing logo. Now, the number 1 winner, and it's not even sold where you're used to buying oil. Amsoil Signature Series. Amsoil doesn't sell through Walmart, AutoZone, or any big box retailer. It's distributed exclusively through authorized dealers, a decision the company has held to for decades, specifically to control quality and formulation consistency, the exact problem identified with the Faithfulda with Supertech at number 2 on the avoid list. In Lake Speed Jr.'s weighted 8 oil test, the same test that put Royal Purple dead last and a Mobil 1 line in the bottom half, Amsoil Signature Series ranked first overall. But here's what makes the Amsoil case different from every other brand on this list. The company backs Signature Series with a 25,000-mile or 1-year warranty, regardless of vehicle mileage, paired with an actual oil analysis recommendation rather than a marketing number pulled from a lab test nobody can replicate. Most full synthetics on this list cap out at 5,000 to 10,000 miles before they need replacing. Run the real math. At roughly $58 per gallon through Amsoil's own retail channel, or closer to $14 per quart at the discounted preferred customer rate and stretched across a documented 25,000-mile interval instead of 5,000, Amsoil Signature Series costs approximately 59 cents per 1,000 miles, compared to roughly $1.15 per 1,000 miles for Mobil 1's own extended performance line running its shorter recommended interval. Over 75,000 miles, that gap adds up to $90 to $100 saved on oil alone, not counting the filters you're not buying 5 extra times. The brand that costs the most per bottle on this entire list ends up costing the least per mile, because it's the only one whose interval claim is backed by a lab-administered ranking instead of a logo. Here's what the data actually prove. Every brand at the bottom of this list is operating legally inside a labeling loophole that one of the industry's own giants tried and failed to close 25 years ago. Full synthetic tells you almost nothing on its own. Run the numbers side by side. Supertech costs about $0.0040 per mile and carries formulation uncertainty nobody discloses. Amsoil Signature Series costs more per bottle, but works out to roughly 59 cents per 1,000 miles when you actually run its documented interval. The cheap option isn't the cheap option once you look at the full math. Has a full synthetic oil let you down at lower mileage than the bottle promised? Or do you run one of the 3 winners and have the receipts to back it up? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. Next, the oil filter that's quietly letting contaminated oil straight back into a freshly changed engine, and it's still sitting on the shelf next to the oil you just bought. Thanks for watching.